Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I thought I would do a ramble video. It's going to be very simple. The only thing to look at is going to be the things that you see on the screen now. So I've got 2 candles and an angel, and I thought today I would talk about my experiences with spirit. So before we get started, I will just light the candles. So we've got one Yankee candle here and then one woodwick candle. I really love the woodwick candles. I think they make the most beautiful noise. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it when it starts crackling. Let's have a look. I'm not sure you'll be able to hear that. It's very quiet at the moment. Okay, so let's get on with the video. So I have always been quite open to spirit. I was brought up in a family with a mum who was very aware and very open to spirit herself. So I was always, quite open and aware, I guess. And my experiences started from quite a young age, I guess. I remember I used to have a lot of predictive dreams when I was younger. Really strange things like dreaming about really disastrous weather, and then like a couple of weeks later we'd have horrendous storms and things that were damaging people's houses, and I can't really remember what else I used to dream of because I was quite young, but I did used to get these sort of predictive dreams, and that's something that my mum always had as well, and always told us about her predictive dreams. So I seem to start my journey with spirit that way, so having lots of predictive dreams, and then I would tell people about them, and like I say, a couple of weeks later excuse me, a couple of weeks later or whatever it might be, they would come true. I remember growing up that I always felt that my nan and granddad's house was a real centre of activity. If I ever spoke to them about it, they would say, no, there are no ghosts in here, blah 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 blah. But I could always sense, and not just in the way that kids are scared of, most houses, because it felt very different to my mum's home. My mum's home, although I knew she'd had some spiritual experiences there, I never really sensed anything there. But from a very young age in my nan and granddad's house, I was very aware that there was a history and that there were spirits that would come into that house, but nobody would ever really listen to me, which I understand. And then I remember as I got a little bit older, I used to have recurring dreams about 2 spirits in particular that were in my nan and grandpa's house. One was a little girl and the other was an elderly lady, and I don't think either of them were bad spirits at all, but they were both quite benevolent, I suppose. I think there was probably a lot of history and a lot that needed to come out for both of them, so they weren't particularly happy spirits. But there was one end of the house that they would always seem to appear in, and they were never downstairs, they were always upstairs, both of these spirits. And in the dreams they would sort of inhabit the same sort of areas of the house, which would be the back bedroom upstairs, and then they would move up the hallway, up the landing upstairs, and then back and forth between the back bedroom and the landing. Now I remember I can't really remember what the elderly lady looked like, but I can sort of still see the little girl in my head. She had very long hair, long dark hair, and she was wearing a dress. And she was just very sad, but I think when I was younger I was quite frightened of her. But now older, looking back, she just always seemed sad, I think. candle have started going crazy. Wouldn't surprise me if we get some spirits coming in while I'm talking anyway, but that's okay. So I never ever sensed the little girl when I was awake. I only ever sensed her in dreams. But the elderly lady, I regularly sensed her when I was awake, and I was very frightened to go upstairs in the dark or to go into certain rooms unaccompanied when it was dark. Actually, not just when it was dark, the back bedroom always felt strange to me, and I was never particularly keen on going in there on my own, whether it was light or dark. But I think this old lady used to patrol quite regularly. I sensed her coming down the stairs a few times, and I heard footsteps in my nan and granddad's house so many times, but my granddad would always just say, "Oh no, it's an old house, it's the heating, it's this, it's that." But they were very distinct footsteps to me. And I would see sort of shadows passing past the door, and things like that. Never any real full manifestations, and that was about as much as I saw for many, many years, was just shadows. I would hear footsteps, and then I would just get a sense of somebody being there. And the dreams, of course. I'm just going to have a drink of my hot chocolate. When I was younger, I was always very interested in spirit, but I was also really scared. And as I got into my sort of late teens and early 20s, I was still really intrigued by spirit, but again, scared to delve too deep. I never really wanted to see a full manifestation. I think I might be jumping ahead here a bit, but going into my early 20s, my sister started going to mediums, and I was terrified to go because I just didn't want to find anything bad out about, the future or the relationship I was in at the time. So I did sort of close myself off somewhat. But if I go back a bit again to my first, I suppose my first real spiritual experience, again, this was in my nan and granddad's house. A lot of the activity happened there. And I used to sleep over quite regularly because my mum was quite unwell when I was younger, and she was also a very unpleasant woman, if you've watched one of my other videos, you'll know. So I used to spend as much time as I could at my grandparents' house. So I was getting ready for bed one night, and it was just me staying over. I think my sister must have been back at my mum's house. My nan and granddad were still downstairs because I'd said goodnight to them. So I was getting ready to go to bed, and we had these really solid wooden doors with brass handles on them, and when you shut those doors, they wouldn't just open on their own, they shut very firmly. And as I was getting ready, it was the strangest thing, and for a while not for a while, for a split second, I was convinced somebody must have been there, but the handle, and they were very stiff handles, really like squeaky when you opened the doors, and the handle moved up and down maybe like 3, 4, 5 times really, really quickly. And I sprung around the bed because there were 2 single beds in the bedroom for me and my sister. So I sprung around the other single bed and I yanked open the door thinking, well, I don't even know what I was thinking. I guess I suspected somebody was going to be there. And obviously there wasn't. And I could hear the TV on downstairs. I could hear my grandparents were still downstairs. And there was nobody the other side of the door. So that was the first physical, not a physical manifestation, but the first physical evidence I saw of spirit. Until that point, it had been, things in the corner of my eyes or feelings or dreams. That was the first time they'd actually showed me physically that they were around. And then there were dreams that I had about somebody who at that point I didn't know who he was. I used to dream about this man with dark curly hair, very tall, very slender man. And I dreamt about him a couple of times, I think, and I know my mum had dreamt about him as well when we sort of compared dreams. It seemed to be the same sort of person, and nobody ever really knew who he was. And then one night I dreamt that I was stood in the street outside my mum's house. I was walking towards the house, and that this gentleman was looking in through the front room window, and he was looking in at my sister, who was sat on the computer in the front room, just doing whatever she was doing, and he was just watching her. And I had sort of a strange feeling come over me. It wasn't that I kind of knew he wasn't going to hurt her, but as her big sister, I had to make that clear. So I said to him, he kind of stopped and he turned and he looked at me, and I said, "Just don't you hurt her." And he said to me, "I'm not here to hurt her, I'm here to look after her." And when I woke up, I kind of knew that I'd met my sister's guide. So I told her the next day, and she sort of had these shivers come all over her, and she got really emotional. And then years later, when she started going to mediums, we found out that, well, the same character came through and was described by the medium, and it turned out that he was our little brother, and he'd been lost in the womb. He's my little brother. Sorry, he would have been my sister's older brother. He was lost in the womb between both me and my sister coming to the earth plane, and he's watched over us ever since, but in particular has watched over my sister because he was a lot closer in age to her. I'm not sure whether I don't think they would have been twins actually, but they were a lot closer in age, so he's always watched over her. And ever since then, and as I've developed my connection with spirit a lot more, I've been a lot more aware of him. And it's going to sound very strange to people who perhaps don't believe in spirit, but it's been really comforting to get to know him from the other side and know that he's there for me and my sister whenever we need him. He's a very comical character. He's always up to no good, always trying to make us laugh, but he's also fiercely protective and very loving. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. Then again, in my sort of early to mid-20s, while I was still quite closed off to spirit, I wasn't seeking to develop my gifts or develop my awareness or anything like that. And I was living with an ex of mine. And just little things that would happen. So I remember that one night I heard somebody call me in the kitchen. And because I got so frightened, I can't even remember now what they said, but they called my name. I know they definitely called my name, and they said something else as well, but I don't know what they'd said because I just completely freaked out. And that was the first time I'd ever had an auditory experience of spirit. And I remember I just ran into because I must have been locking up the flat or something. I think my ex had already got into bed. So I was locking up and turning everything off. And I ran into the bedroom, dived under the covers, and I was like, oh my god, somebody's just spoken to me. And he was a complete wuss anyway, so there's no way he ever would have gone and checked or, gone to see what was happening. I think he was more freaked out than I was, but this is how I know that these things actually happen, because it was the instant reaction. It was the same when that door handle went. It was that instant reaction that it forced me to react, I suppose. Whereas, if I was imagining it, I wouldn't have reacted the way that I did. But that was the first time I ever heard spirit actually speak to me. And I don't get that often anymore, but yeah, that was interesting. And then another time, I had a few things happen in that flat. I've got a feeling it was mostly my brother. Now, when I look back and knowing who he is and knowing the character that he is, I think it was him, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was trying to freak my ex out as well. So I don't think he would have been particularly fond. So there was another night when we'd done the dishes and whatever, and we'd gone to bed, and then the next morning there was a piece of Tupperware and it had flown completely across the kitchen. And my first reaction was, obviously it's just fallen off the draining board, it's no big deal, there's nothing there's nothing suspicious there. But then when I looked at where it landed, it just made no sense. There's no way that if it had fallen off the draining board, it would have reached where it did. So I tried to recreate it so many times because I am still somewhat of I'm a skeptic until I have proof, I suppose. So I tried to recreate it so many times how it could have flown off, and there's just absolutely no way at all it could have landed the way it did. So yeah, I put that down to spiritual activity as well. And then after my ex left, I stayed in the flat on my own. And it was either a few weeks or a few months after he'd left. All of his stuff had been packed up. He'd been gone the whole time. And I was still very sad, obviously, and I was wandering around my bedroom. And it's very difficult to explain, but there was sort of a really comforting scent of aftershave, but almost drifting sort of where my head was, like that sort of level. And it wasn't anything that he used to wear because it wasn't a scent I'd smelt before, but it just felt really comforting. And I took that as a positive that somebody was there watching over me. And again, now I look back and I think I know who it was, but at the time I didn't. And then I met somebody else, and he was very anti-spiritual world, so I shut down for a while. And then after I had some strange things that my sister said to me when she'd been to this medium, things that just, there was no way the lady ever would have known. But still I tried to shut it down and lock it up somewhere, not really think about it because, I knew he wasn't into that, and unfortunately I let myself be led. But after we broke up, I started to open up again a lot more to spirit, and I bought myself some tarot cards and I started to teach myself how to read tarot. And that was really, and I went to see a medium myself as well, and the same lady who my sister had been to see, and she didn't know who I was, but she brought through a lot of the same information that she brought through for my sister. Just going to take a drink. And she made me aware that I had a gift as well and encouraged me to explore it. So I did buy myself some tarot cards and started to teach myself how to read tarot, and everything really started to open up from there. So I started by, doing some readings for myself, and then family and friends and what have you. And then I did a charity event in work for Halloween in one of my old jobs to raise money for charity. So I was taking donations and doing tarot readings in return. And I found that there were messages that were coming through to me that weren't on the cards. There were things that were popping into my head, and almost like there was somebody on my shoulder that was telling me certain things. And then when I'd relay them to the person in front of me, it would make complete sense. So there was, somebody I read for whose grandmother came through, and I was able to tell him exactly how she died, what her favourite things were when she was alive, and I'd never experienced this before, so it was very strange to me. And a lot of the, some of the messages that would come through I would relay, and then others I would think, oh, this is silly, this doesn't make any sense, they're not going to know what I'm talking about. So back then I didn't have the confidence to, fully relay the messages. But I carried on with tarot and carried on doing, readings like that for people that I knew. And then when I moved in, when I moved in with my current boyfriend, I went to a spiritualist church that's around here. And my gift started to develop a lot faster. I joined a course where it was supposed to be an advanced mediumship course, and I hadn't done the basic course, but she basically said that if I could pass the test, I suppose, of standing up on stage and relaying messages to people, then I could get on the course. And I had no confidence at the time. I don't have much confidence now, but I certainly didn't have the confidence to stand up in front of anybody and talk. And yet I had this energy next to me all night pushing me, get up on the stage, get up on the stage. and he was passing me messages of what he needed to say, and describing who he was, and telling me about memorable objects and things. So eventually I did. I got up on the stage, and there was a lady who was able to take the message, and it got me onto the course. So my connections to spirit, really, I've got to speed up because I'm going to run out of time. I've been talking for 20 minutes already and I've only got like 24 on here. So that really sped up my connections with spirit. I continued to work with the tarot cards, but I also learned how to open up my mediumship connections, work with guides that I've had probably for a long time, work with family members who have passed over, and I'm really grateful for how I've been guided by them all and how much my abilities have really developed. So now like I say, I still use tarot cards. I do mediumship as well, and I'm so grateful when I get a strong connection come through. And there's nothing quite like being able to give evidence to the person in front of you that you've actually got their loved one with you. It's such an incredible feeling. And some of the messages I've been passing on, especially lately, it feels like things have strengthened because I've passed on some really difficult and quite astounding messages that there is no way I ever would have known. You know, the people sitting in front of me, often I've never met them before, or I know very little about them, and yet I'm able to pass on these messages that really resonate, and it feels incredible. I've also done 2 levels of Reiki healing, and the energies with healing with spirit are completely different, and I think I'll talk about that in another video perhaps. I would like to do a Reiki video at some point, but I'm not sure how I want to do it yet because I'm trained in Reiki. I don't really want to just do all the twiddly fingers like a lot of the ASMR role plays. I want it to be genuine, and I want to send healing energies out to the people who are watching the video, so I still need to figure that one out. So yeah, I've done a bit of platform mediumship over the last couple of years, one-on-one mediumship readings, tarot and oracle cards. I've done scrying with objects, mirrors and things, and I think it's called scrying where you read an object as well. But it's really interesting, and I just wanted to share that sort of whistle-stop tour of my experience with spirit with you. And hopefully I can make another video like this in the future, talk about my healing journey, and then talk a little bit more about perhaps my guides or my connections with spirit, or other things that I move on to do as I continue to work with the spiritual realm. Yeah, so thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you found this relaxing, and if you're into the world of spirit, then I hope you found this really interesting. Comment below if you've got any spiritual connections, if you're a medium, a tarot reader, anything like that, or if you have any dreams or anything like that. I'd love to hear from you. Any strange experiences, I love all that stuff. So yeah, comment below if you have any of that to share, and thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.